Welcome, dear listeners, dear viewers. My name is John Consemulder of Healing Sound Movement Television. Please go to healingsoundmovement.com. Also check our World Peace Child Initiative working with children and for children for a better and more sustainable world. worldpeacechild.com, which is also, of course, World Peace Child TV. Today we have a very special guest again. We met last year.
That's right.
Mr. David Wolfe. Then we talked about your book, Eating for Beauty. I'm not sure if the camera can make a JPEG out of this while we do the interview, but we talked about that. And of course, this is the Dutch edition, which is also entitled Eating for Beauty. And now we have this book, Superfoods. And of course, as I remember, it's already 2009, the English version, the international version.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, 2012, it's released
in the Dutch language.
The Dutch language by Succes Boeken. And yesterday we filmed your event, which has been done by Succes Gids, again, like last year. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Because last year was a bomb, but this year was 750 people, I believe, in the house.
That's right, yeah.
That's what I call sold out, right?
That was sold out. It was fully sold out. What an experience. What a great feeling. And what was interesting is there was a lot of new people in the audience. There was also a lot of people who there'd been a buzz around, and they came because there was a buzz around the event, which is a nice thing that we created enough mystery.
And all over the world.
All over the world.
Canada.
People came from South Africa, Canada.
Yep.
There was people there from the UK, a lot of people from the UK who came over. There was my crew that came over from the UK, and there was a whole nother crew that I didn't even know about that came over. And they asked me, when are you coming to London? Are you ever going to come to London again? I like Holland a lot. I always have. I was raised by my aunt a good part of my life, and my aunt always had foreign exchange students come stay with her, and two of them were Dutch.
Okay.
And so that's when I first got exposed to Dutch culture when I was a kid. And when I first started traveling the world, I came immediately to Holland just to check it out, and I've been coming ever since. The first event started here over 10 years ago. I had 6 people show up.
That's what you mentioned last year,
last
about
time.
7. I thought it was very fun. So you're multiplying in ways the cosmos cannot comprehend.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So,
yeah.
I want to congratulate you with this book as well.
Thank you.
And what I saw, which is very interesting, it's dedicated to the, not the best day ever, the best mother ever. So
yeah,
she's proud, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's something that happens as I'm at this point in my life where, do you remember the original Superman movie?
Yes.
With
the vintage one.
The vintage one, and Clark Kent, he always sent his money back to his mother, and his back in Kansas. So that's what I'm doing with the proceeds of that book. I'm sending it back to my mom.
Yes.
Yeah. And I just started doing that. It's like, yeah, it's time. I need to she doesn't need to do, I need to just fully take care of her 100%. So that's what's happening as a result of that book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you became famous stardom of superfood stardom, already before that, I think, but especially also after Food Matters, the movie. In that movie, there's the sentence, "You are what you eat." Is that going away soon, or is it here to stay?
It's here to stay. It's an amazing phrase. If
Yes.
you look into every language, they have a phrase for that. It's intrinsic to a human being. You are what you eat it's like a cosmic law or a cosmic habit, however you want to describe it. It's universal. And it allows us to uncode the whole thing. Once we got that piece of information, you are what you eat, what do you mean? Then we can start tuning in on quality. So whatever we are eating, we can then go, wait, I can have better quality. Maybe that can create higher quality thoughts. And then if we experience that that's actually happening, then we're driven to go further and investigate it deeper. And that's the message, that's the core of the message that I've been putting out there for all these years. You are what you eat, and then if you remember the phrase that happened yesterday, it's a phrase that comes from the Upanishads. The subtle energy of your food becomes your mind.
Yes.
What an amazing phrase that is. That's one of my favorites of all time. The subtle energy of your food becomes your mind.
Real body-mind research and its implications.
The implications are amazing. They're amazing. And I'm a researcher in You Are What You Eat. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, that's what I am. I'm a researcher. A friend of mine really sat me down one day. He said, look, here's what you are. You're a researcher. You're researching and scientifically investigating. You are what you eat.
And you did a lot of academics, professor in nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done a lot of academic work. But it's not my forte. I mean, my forte is having the best day ever.
You found your new niche.
Yeah, that's
so
my
to speak,
real
yes.
niche. Yeah. But I do find there are moments where I like to be with my computer and really just having fun and flowing. And I've been doing that actually this week. I had a good night from about 2 to 4 in the morning where I was on that computer. It was the last thing of the day. All else was out of the way. And I could just be on the computer and I was able to write 10 pages and it was amazing.
The best nighttime ever.
It was. It really is. I mean, there came a point in my life, and this is what I wish for all kids out there. You know, there was a time when I would rather be out partying with my friends, and then it switched, and suddenly I would rather be studying. Suddenly I'd rather be reading. It became more interesting to me and more entertaining to actually read and learn than it was to go out.
Like a quest.
Yeah, like I felt like, oh my God, I'm onto something.
Yeah.
I'm onto something. Let me see what happens. And when that switch happens to you, then you really are a scholar. You know, when it's more fun for you to write and read than it is to go out with your friends, then I guess at that point you're like an academic.
Then you're
a
off the
scholar.
track of the pursuit of happiness, but the pursuit of wisdom.
You're pursuing some really noble ideals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really feel like we need to make reading and learning cool again. And I think J.K. Rowling has done that with the Harry Potter series, is that she's actually made reading and learning cool.
Yes.
And that is such a gift. I mean, that's the best thing for kids.
Like you said last year, reading is sexy. Write it down.
It is.
Reading
It's
is sexy.
Yes, absolutely. You remember that. Good job.
Yeah, of course. I edited all the material.
Okay,
2
so
weeks of
so you
editing.
were like, well, you were into it, so into it. That's no wonder you remember.
Yeah.
It's really all about when you're dealing with video. It's all about the editing.
Yeah.
And whenever I work with somebody who's in that field, I'm always trying to find out, okay, are they really a good editor? Do they have the abilities to edit? Because that's the real
I hope
secret.
you saw the movie. I edited the 1-hour version of your 9-hour talk, which is quite an amazing treat in itself, I guess. And then I edited that one down in 13 minutes, which is quite impossible to do in your case.
Wow.
Because you're a walking encyclopedia of wisdom and knowledge. Well, and talking about that, I have a question about not just superfoods, but nature in general. So what's your feeling that, how does nature know the intelligence that it works like this? Because some people are saying, well, biological foods, of course, are better. And of course, the pharmaceutical interest is saying, no, we can even improve with pharmaceutical stuff and even enhance some things. But then again, the holistic approach in nature and the whole food approach, it helps the balance to get like an homeostasis principle, and also the immune system in our body works like that. But some people are saying, well, no, our DNA adjusts to food. So would that mean, I know the answer is no, it's a critical question. Would that mean that as long as we get exposed to the bad stuff, chemicals, bad food, our DNA would get like adjusted because of its evolution? Or is natural food natural because our body just understands it in a universal way, and maybe a way for the future and the past?
Great question. I mean, it brings up a big topic of discussion recently, which is a big area of science and where it's all going, which is epigenetics.
And nutrigenomics.
Yep. So basically, it's the influence of the environment on the cell and on the DNA.
Yes.
And there's no question that the environment influences the DNA more than the other way around. That your DNA is basically going to be activated in certain ways based on certain things that are happening in the environment.
Triggers.
It's triggers, and that makes perfect sense. That's very sensible. And we're learning that us as a constructed organism may not be DNA's prerogative to maintain us under certain conditions. For example, when somebody gets a hyperacidic condition, high level carcinogens, very low hydration level, then the DNA will activate in a certain way where it becomes cancerous, and it activates certain aspects of itself to survive that may have nothing to do with the whole body politic.
Sure.
And that's to me is interesting. There's no question that there are huge epigenetic factors in cancer. Huge. I mean, carcinogens are the most obvious of them, but there's a lot of factors now that we know about. If you don't have
And
the right...
also emotional epigenetics,
Yeah,
of course,
right.
the mind.
Yeah, so your mind creating that new body environment, and the emotion creating that new body environment is absolutely going to affect the community of cells that we live in.
Communication pathways.
Yeah, so we always want to maintain the epigenetics, mind, body, also the actual physicality of the cellular community, so that it supports long life, it supports intelligence, it supports wisdom. And here's what we're learning on that, is that as we go deeper and deeper into our body, we find some really interesting things out. One of them is, most of us is not us. Most of us is bacteria. That we have more genetics of bacteria that live on us than we have genetics of us.
The microorganisms.
The microorganisms.
The friendly or the non-friendly,
Now, the non-friendly.
depending on the epigenetics of the situation.
That's exactly right. And so what our genetics are really coded to do is create a farming environment so that all those friendly bacteria are really happy. But if we get epigenetic signals that create an unhappy farm, then all those bad guys show up and they take over the farm. And if that goes too far, that's going to become cancer.
So we have to become healthy farmers again?
That's right. And we're healthily farming our friendly bacteria. Now, what's interesting about that is very abrasive soaps, very abrasive shampoos, very abrasive chemicals that we're taking, like antibiotics, absolutely disturb that friendly farming environment for those microbes. And that's why we're not going to get the breakthroughs through chemistry. We're going to get the breakthroughs through microbiology. That microbiology and the study of the community of life forms that live with us, the substances they eat, the substances they excrete, that is the future of medicine and food. That's what I've been privy to. I've been privy to something that most people have never seen, and that the future of medicine and food is going to be taking the organisms that live with us. Let's just take a simple one, Acidophilus.
Yes.
We probably heard of that one.
Yeah.
So we'll just take that one because that's a fun one to talk about. Acidophilus, it eats certain things, or certain things it likes, and it excretes certain things, and those things that it excretes are good for us.
Yes.
Right?
Their shit is good food for us.
That's right. That's exactly
you heard it here first. Yes.
Yes. And it is exactly that. And their food is actually different than kind of the chemicalized food that we have, right? It's got to be real food. It's got to be food that supports life, because Acidophilus supports life. It's got to be food that is friendly to Acidophilus in a way that where Acidophilus is like, I want more of this, please. And we can actually take that environment out of our body, move it out here, feed the Acidophilus, entertain them, cajole them, give them all the goodies, let them excrete their chemistries, take their chemistries, and then ingest that, spray it on our skin, spray it in our mouth, spray it in our nose, spray it in our ear, and then we get a really interesting future of where nutrition's headed. And where it's all going is that these superfoods right here, and the great super herbs, which are actually, I talk about them in here.
Yes.
Those are the favorite foods of Acidophilus.
So we go from macrobiotics to microbiotics.
Microbiotics, that's right. It's microbiotics, yeah, exactly. So that's the frontier. That's what's happening on the frontier. And there's a lot of stuff, to be said there, but.
And the thing you said, if we keep on going the chemical path, would that lead, because you talked about antibiotics, immediately my intuition is saying MRSA, the multiple resistant Staphylococcus aureus bacteria in hospitals, but also autoimmune disease. So is this the path to those directions? Might it be?
Yeah,
it's related.
Kind of thing, it's very, well, first of all, the cellular environment and community within each individual person is extremely complex.
Yes.
But we can bring it back to simple ideas always, because the universe is understood that way. It's like, we need the ideal in order to understand reality. The ideal isn't reality, but it helps us to understand it. It's a pathway. So we can bring it back to simple stuff. Hydration, for example, right? We want to bring it back to like just eating in a way that's friendly and supportive of life. And if we have things like chemicals and it's suddenly we have cancers and autoimmune conditions and all different kinds of eczema and psoriasis, we also have to have the wherewithal in here to put it together and say that is causing this and put it together.
Or at least a cofactor.
It's a cofactor, right? And we can't just be running around in judgment and denial anymore. We got to get out of this judgment and denial circle. Now, more and more this is happening. More and more it's realized that, for example, the chemistry of our mouth, for example, if we have the more mercury we have in our mouth, the more danger there is for our child, our unborn child. The more mercury we have in our mouth, the more danger there is for all different kinds of autoimmune conditions.
I put it out 2 years ago.
Did you get them all out?
The amalgam fillings with the special treatment, and I felt like, my God, this dentist is even in far more problem than me because of all the gases it puts out of the treatment. And you have to use antioxidants for 2 months because of the treatment afterwards.
That's right, yeah. dentists are in great danger, actually. The suicide rate of dentists in America is the highest of any profession. And it has something to do with mercury, because mercury causes insanity. And we do have, you know, the knowledge
it's
now.
a neurotoxic.
It's a neurotoxin. We have the knowledge now to realize that DDT is 1/10 as toxic as mercury. So mercury is still the most toxic thing. So this mercury amalgam filling thing it's a residue of that chemical way of doing things that doesn't understand the microbiology layers that make us up.
The real holistic approach.
The real holistic approach. And when you want to heal yourself, you need to bring life to life, right? So for example, if I was to culture something, let's say I made coconut water. I opened a bunch of coconuts at my house in Hawaii. I made a bunch of coconut water, and then I put in some acidophilus and bifidus and infantis and thermophilus and L. salivarius and plantarum and enterocus
That
facium.
sounds like a good party going on.
There's a big party going on. There's a bunch of guys in there getting things happening.
The fermentation party.
The fermentation party. And then I open those all up and I swirl those around and I pull a rag over it so that no flies can get in there. And I just let that sit there for 24 hours. And then I drink that. That's like D-Day. That means the allies are coming, and they're going to come in and they're going to wash into my body, and they're going to help and they're going to support and they're going to help to build me stronger and stronger and stronger. And this is what we're learning about healing, is that healing has a lot to do with this microbiology that can make us stronger. And this is really the essence of what I feel is very synergistic work to what I do, the essence of my friend Donna Gates's work on body ecology.
Yeah, you showed that yesterday.
It's very, very important information. Just to get that knowledge, that understanding of that microbiological community, but then also to bring it back like, okay, well, what's going to be for dinner? Here's what's for dinner. Things that are normal.
Things that are really natural.
Yeah, things that are natural and normal, that haven't been sprayed with every chemical in the book, that actually have microbiological life on them. Now, here's what's happening with those mutated strains, like you mentioned, is that life is not going to be repelled. So it will mutate to harsher and harsher strains to survive.
Adaptation.
It'll adapt. It'll survive the antibiotics. It'll survive chemicals that are being used in the ventilation systems of hospitals or on the tables or on the floors. It'll mutate, and then it becomes even more dangerous. So we need to get out of that model, because it's going to get us to stuff that is so mutated and so dangerous and so deadly that you can't even go into a hospital. You know, it's because you could get exposed.
Yes, we had that. With our children.
You've already been through that.
We went for something else, and we needed antibiotics, but of course we put that aside and we used colloidal silver.
Silver.
And it worked.
And it works.
And it's amazing, because I even teach about that, but to use it for yourself and your children, then the mind thing comes again. How convinced are you that it's really working? And it worked, and we had to could put aside antibiotics for the whole family for months. So that's my statement here.
And that's powerful to have that information and have that knowledge, and then you're empowered. You are actually empowered. You had an experience that empowered you about how to take care of your family. That's super important to know about that. Now, as we get into like where we really want to be, what we want to do is we want to foster environments that are friendly to life, friendly to your life, friendly to your child's life, so that they're not going to get any weird bacteria from something or somewhere, or you get in some hospital, because those bacteria won't be there, because we're using no harsh chemicals and no harsh antibiotics. So in my house, we use lemon juice, we use vinegar, we use water. Occasionally we use Dr. Bronner's soap. That's it. We don't use, that's for washing my dishes, that's for washing my clothes, that's for washing my body, that's for everything. And we don't need anything more than that. And that way we have an environment in the home where we're going to be supporting life. And so we're not going to get any weird mutations. Kids can walk on the floor, crawl on the floor, hands in their mouth. There's not any weird stuff around.
To condition the immune system the right way.
Right, exactly, so that it's natural. And I also love about my house is that, you know, I don't have any problem letting the kids just run out in the yard and do whatever they want. They want to poop or pee or whatever they want to do. It's just perfectly fine, because that's what's supposed to happen out there in the orchard.
Yes.
That's really nice too. So there's nothing in the environment that is creating this extreme strains of salmonella or E. coli or staphylococcus or any of this kind of stuff.
It's our misworking with nature that produces it actually as a result.
Right, exactly. And so, you hear a lot of times people blaming a cow or they'll blame, whatever. Here's what's to blame.
Yeah.
It's here. It's inside us. We're to blame.
It's our ethics, our values, and how we use nature or misuse it.
Misuse it,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. We misunderstand it. I was talking earlier today to a friend of mine about this idea. What we're trying to do is we're just trying to figure out what nature wants, and we're just trying to forward that.
Copy nature, like Schauberger
Yeah.
used to say.
Yep,
Copy nature.
comprehend and copy nature was
Yes.
Schauberger's phrase. That's a very interesting phrase.
Yes.
Comprehend first.
First understand it before you copy.
Yeah, it's like,
Yes.
whoa, okay, whoa, comprehend. Because nature is amazing. This is one of the things that troubles me about traveling so much, is I don't get the time with nature that I really love, but then I do get the time of public speaking, which I also really love.
Yes.
It's a conflict. But I am going home on Wednesday, which is great.
And you're walking barefoot.
I'm going to be barefoot
and
in
then
the
you
forest.
have better
Yeah.
in your lungs, better breathing.
Yeah, well, it's actually like this. To me, when I'm at home in the forest, walking in the forest, I'm in a state of total ecstasy. It is literally that. That's what I feel. That's what's going on. I'm in a state of complete and total cosmic ecstasy.
Like bliss.
It is bliss.
Euphoria.
It's the most. It's euphoria. And on that property, in that forest, I feel that. I don't know if I've ever felt that anywhere else, but on that property, in that forest, I feel that. And it's noticeable, and I know it's not my mind. I know it's something that's happening there. Now, here's what's interesting about that place, is it is really an intact, wild forest. So
Natural permaculture.
it's natural permaculture. It's a wild forest. Now, I noticed something that was really cool this summer. This, in July, I don't know if you knew this, this is the worst drought and the hottest July ever on record in North America, ever. And we had a very serious drought at my house. All the fringes of the forest, like my orchard, which is on the fringes of the forest, suffered. I had trees almost die. I lost a tree. I mean, it was rough. Trying to water everything. I was traveling. It was very, very rough. The forest totally unaffected. Because it all responds as one organism, and it all supports itself. And I looked over, I have a spot on the hill where we can get up really high and look down over the whole forest. It was unaffected.
So compensation, homeostasis principles in nature.
Yep.
The
So
seven layers in permaculture, but in reality, nature just uses it.
Nature just does it.
Yes.
It was only the spots, the only place I saw dead trees was where nature had been cut back, disturbed on the edge of the forest. In the middle of the forest, they all banded together, they all held together, even the biggest trees, none of them showed even the least sign of drought at all. That really blew my mind, I have to say, because I can see a very large expanse of nature from there. I saw no evidence whatsoever that even any tree was even turning brown.
What about, you talked about the forest, the microorganisms, if we combine it, how important is the fertility of the soil? Because some people are saying, you have all these chemicals that the industry puts in the water, in the ground. We have chemtrails maybe. Some people are saying, if that is true, then even biologic organic food would be radiated, or let's put it, and chemically polluted with all this stuff. Can the fertility of the ground still mature, even in biological foods?
Okay,
or
so
do we have to engineer or change some things to help nature, or does it work it out on its own?
Well, nature will work it out on its own eventually.
It's harder, of course, but
nature will work it out if given time. So all we have to do is comprehend and copy nature. We have to comprehend what nature's going to do to fix the problem, and then we have to copy it and see if we can tighten the time space down. Because nature might use 20 years or 50 years or 100 years. I mean, in the forest that I live in, where it's been cut and damaged, my observations, I've been there 7.5 years, my observations is it's going to take about 120 years to work its way all the way through the cycles before it's restored to normal, where nature's been mowed down and just cut.
Time.
It takes a lot of time, and 120 years is a very liberal statement. It might be more, it might be longer than that, it might be 200
Yes,
years.
We're not a very sustainable species right now.
I know, the way we behave.
Yes, I know you
It's
know.
amazing. But what we do is we try to comprehend nature, and so what I do with my farm is I see this in nature. Nature uses erosion, and it uses the way rivers move soils around, and it uses volcanic activity, and it uses landslides to mix together the substances of the earth.
That's why the meandering of rivers, of
Right,
course.
yeah.
It's interaction.
It's interaction. It's trying to mix this, what it really is specifically is trying to mix together dissimilar elements. Like zinc and copper are opposites to each other. They're dissimilar. Gold and silver are opposites to each other. They're dissimilar. So when you mix a bunch of soils together of all different origins, and now they're mixed, then you have a really interesting space where there's a lot of dissimilar elements, and that's what my observation has shown me is what plants like.
So like nature's smoothie in the form of biodiversity.
Thank you. Well said. It's a smoothie.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do in my environment is, this is where my thinking is. I mean, people don't care about this, but I just want to tell you where I'm at. My spot where I'm at, I want people to come there for 1,000 years and come back there and go, something is different about this place here. What is it about? Well, something's going on here. And here's what I've done there. I've put in the little top of my hill right there, I've put in 4.5 tons of local rock dusts, right? Because glaciation, erosion, plants, the way they eat into the rock.
Minerals and charges.
Right, so it's what's happening is they're trying to break the rock up. And then what I'm doing is I'm taking that rock, I'm mixing it with all my soils, I'm mixing it with the ash from my fire, and I'm putting it all together to create this new soil that is dissimilar, and it's what nature's driving at.
Synergy.
It's a synergy, and then I've got my orchard sitting in that, I've got my garden sitting in that, so that I don't yield the benefits of that immediately because I've disturbed nature. I've turned everything up.
Yes.
But what's going to happen is eventually
Balancing out.
and the worms will come in, and they'll start mixing it all together. All the life forms will come back into it because I'm not into disturbing it again.
First they're gonna look, is David still around?
Yeah, so is he around?
He changed it a little bit.
A lot of it. I changed it a lot. But now, all these years later, for example, I've got an apple tree that's it's 7 years old. It's like that, and it's got it. It's got the magic. You can look at it and you go, that tree's got the magic. It's fully producing apple tree, and it's gotten all the goodies.
So you returned epigenetics and nutrigenomics a favor back.
To the plant.
Yeah,
bringing it back to the plant world.
Yeah.
And that's a real passion that I have. It's like, it's almost like a prerogative that's in me. It's weird. It's like certain artists are driven by certain forces within themselves to do certain things. For me, when it comes to that, like landscaping and farming, it's like that. It's like an impulse. I have no control over it. It's like I have to do it in a certain way.
Passion and a goal.
Yeah, it's passionate. I'm very into
driven.
it. I'm driven into it, and it's just I just have to do it in a certain way. It's like an art. It's artistry for me.
Talking about forces and talking about a goal, a driven goal, I want to talk about the gravity of the situation. You talked yesterday, I think I like that, levity, levitation versus gravity. Can you explain our listeners what you mean by that? Because I thought it was fascinating.
It's a fascinating idea.
Related to foods, of course.
It's very much related to food, but it's related to innocent perception. Okay, so we're told all kinds of things about the world. For example, the sun is hot and the earth is cold. But our senses don't tell us that. Our senses tell us that if we get closer to the sun, it gets colder. And our senses tell us is that we get closer to the earth and get in the earth, it gets hotter. It's the opposite, right? That's kind of interesting, isn't it? It's the opposite. So gravity, we look out and we see there cannot just be one force at work. It violates our senses. Gravity. There can't be just gravity. If there was just gravity, there could be no growth. Nothing could grow.
Because it's upwards movement.
Right. Like a plant or tree. A tree violates gravity, absolutely violates everything about gravity. So then they tell you, it's like, no, gravity, pushing everything down, creates friction, pressure. But then I look at a tree and I touch a tree and there's no friction. It's cooler, actually, a lot cooler. Sometimes several degrees cooler. That's amazing. And then I see how the tree is in its glory, blossomed out with all its flowers and all of its leaves. doesn't look like it's fighting gravity to me.
It looks like a pushing force.
It looks like gravity doesn't exist, and it's displacing gravity with another force, which we call levity. In fact, a tree looks very much like it's falling upwards. And so there's two forces at work. There's levity and gravity,
Like
always.
zero-point energy, is that important to this field as well? Because it sounds like we're talking about
Yeah.
anti-gravity physics, but then in nature.
Yeah, but, well, the thing is that nature already figured out how to beat gravity a long time ago. Now we have to comprehend and copy nature and figure out, wait a second, how else in the world is that tree getting that water up there?
Yeah.
Now, if you look at a tree and you're very clever about it, you start really paying attention to this. Most of the water in the tree, where is it? Where's the most of the water in the tree? Now we'll start at the trunk of the tree or even the roots. Start at the roots and we'll work our way up. And let's say we're in the height of summer. There's just been a summer rain. Where's most of the water in the tree? It'll be always at the extremes. It'll be very, very deep in the ground, and it'll be very, very high up in the tree. And people say, what about the trunk of the tree? Well, when you actually get into the trunk of the tree, there's only about that thickness right there that's actually got any water in it. The rest of it is the hard core of the tree. So as you go up, that thickness increases. And then you start looking at the soft and bendable twigs and all the leaves, that has more water in it. So more of that water, the higher you are, the more water there is, which makes no sense at all because of gravity. Gravity should be pushing it all down.
Yes.
But see, the laws of gravity doesn't pertain inside the tree, just like it doesn't pertain inside you.
Like the capillary functions.
That's right.
It's the same.
It's levity. So what's moving? Do you sense everything moving around in your body fighting gravity? You do sense this at all?
My wife does. She qigong. Internal alchemy. She does, but me, no clue.
Yeah, it's like it just moves around. It just does what it does. That's levity.
Yeah.
See, levity is it's a lightness, so you don't even sense any gravity inside you. You move with ease and grace. Now, what Rudolf Steiner says about this is amazing, and I'm a big fan of Rudolf Steiner. And Rudolf Steiner says this. He says, somebody asked him, why do we age? And this is what his answer was. He could have said anything, but this is what he said. He said, we age because we gradually accumulate substances that are seized by the Earth's gravity.
Wow, that's deep.
I read that and I was like, oh my God. Because I've been on this levity thing for years. I mean, it was really Victor Schauberger that turned me on to the whole levity thing. And then I read Steiner and I read that and I'm like, oh man, that is deep. That's really right on too. So this is where we bring it into food. Whenever and at all times that we can have substances that have a high amount of levity in them. For example, a fresh shooting out leaf of lettuce from your garden. It has levity. Whenever you can ingest that, good.
Because it has the urge to embryonically
Move
develop
upward,
and move upwards.
and it has a spiral action
Yes.
that is associated with levity. The gravity is an energy that moves straight down in a line.
Yeah.
But levity doesn't behave that
It's
way.
like a vortex energy.
Right, it's a vortex energy. It moves around. Now, we first saw this with our
And in
eyes.
sacred geometry probably also.
Yeah, right. It's moving in basically it's a phi ratio
Fibonacci,
sequence, right?
Yes.
We first saw this, I mean, in our generation, we first saw this when they started doing slow motion stop action photography of plants. Remember? And then they'd speed it up. And all of a sudden you'd see the plant, normally you can't see it move.
Yeah.
But over 30 days, you'd see it was going like this. It was
All
doing
non-linear.
Yeah, non-linear spiral action and moving up, climbing upwards. That's super fascinating to me. I mean, I find that to be really, really interesting. And this is exactly what goes on with our veins and arteries inside our body. They have that same spiral action. So whenever we have an inflammation, we basically have accumulated forces that are being seized by gravity and they're clogging stuff up in a straight line. And our body likes doing this, but now we've got stuff that's stuck in there, plaque, for example, that's stuck and it's screwing up the flow.
It's the end of flow, yes.
Yeah, so we always want to be, whenever possible, imbibing, inculcating, ingesting substances that actually move in spiral patterns that are still have that fractal patterning and that literally levitate. That's why I'm a spring water hunter. People are like, why do you want, how about distilled water? I mean, you can survive on distilled water, yeah, but it has no levity. You go to a spring, there's a weird thing about springs. They're coming up out of the ground. That's weird. What about gravity?
And isn't there something important at the friction levels of an outside world of one thing and the new beginning of, like the spring, because it's the outward
It's an
form
event
of the
horizon.
world. But yes, that's
It's
what
an event
yes,
horizon.
that's what you said last year. I remember that.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah.
It's an anomaly, and I like getting people to springs so you can observe it. There's an anomaly occurring right there, in that there's an event horizon. The events of what's going on inside the Earth and the chemistry of the inner Earth, which, by the way, gravity in the atmosphere has nothing to do with gravity in the Earth.
That's another ball game.
It's another ball game. There's way more levity in the Earth. As soon as you get in the Earth, there's levity. As soon as you get out of the Earth, you're in the atmosphere, there's more gravity.
Yeah.
This has been proven with trees. It's been proven if you get a device inside a tree and you measure the gravitational force in the tree, the gravity is deflected by a factor. It's amazing, actually. That's crazy. Like, whoa.
Another crazy thing you mentioned, and please continue if I interrupted you
Yeah.
too soon now, but last year I remember, you see, I did 2 weeks of editing. I
Okay,
remember it all, okay? Every sentence. But there was an interesting thing with, I believe, the growth and development of the reishi or the chaga mushroom. It was at certain geometry levels. And I was thinking, this sounds to me like as above, so below, so within, so without. So the cosmoplanetary factors, do they impinge on nature? Does nature work with it? The world of charges?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yes, that's a very interesting
Like
subject.
grounding also?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was mentioning lettuce. Okay, now let's say I'm out in the forest and I'm looking for something that has levitational quality, and all of a sudden I stumble across a chaga mushroom on a birch tree. Now this is a very interesting find, because that lettuce has been there for maybe 6 weeks. And we eat, almost everything we eat is like 6 weeks old, or 3 weeks old, or 3 months old, or half a year old, or it's a month old. We eat things that are way too young to take on the depth of the cosmic forces of the outer planets, according to Rudolf Steiner.
And the development stages it could achieve.
Yes, right, exactly. So like with a chaga that's sticking out of this tree, it's been there for 30 years.
Yeah.
When you come across a big chaga like this that's been out of the side of a tree, that thing could have been there 20 years, 25 years, 30
Accumulation
years.
of chi or jing or prana, whatever we want to talk about.
All kinds of stuff going on there as compared to the lettuce. It's also known that the medicinal mushrooms produce spores that go up. They're levitational. I've seen it. It's a phenomenon. Let me just tell you a quick story about this. I was in the forest one day. It was September 15th, 2008. Sounds about right, somewhere back then. And I look over, and there was a huge conch on a tree, dead tree. So we call them conchs. Basically it's a medicinal mushroom. It's a gigantic mushroom that grows off a big tree that's dead. And it was so big that we all gathered around to look at it, because it was just bizarre how big this thing was. And all of a sudden it went psh, and we were like, what the heck is this? I mean, I've been hunting in forests. I've been in forests my whole life. I've been hunting mushrooms in forests for years. I've never seen anything like this. I couldn't actually believe what was going on.
That sound was not a group of people who just ate raw food and because of the gas.
Yeah, and it wasn't
there,
elves and gnomes and fairies
Please
either.
continue in that case. Yeah.
Actually, what we saw, and we saw it 3 times, was that the mushroom released its spores. We actually witnessed the moment when it did it that year. And that's all that will happen that year. It's very rare to see, because you have to be in the forest at the right time for that particular mushroom to release its spores.
What are the odds?
What are the odds? I took a picture of it. I took 3 pictures of it. I do have a picture of it, actually. And basically what happens is the mushroom spores come out the bottom and they float up. They go up. It's like smoke. And it did that 3 times, and we were completely just stunned. I mean, flabbergasted, completely stunned. Now, when I'm dealing with this chaga here, I know it has levitational substances in it. It's obviously part of a tree, so that's for sure. But it's got depth of wisdom of the outer planets and the outer cosmos. That's why ginseng is so revered, because it's in that ground for 25 years. It gains different information once it makes it past a year. Then once it makes it past 10 years, it gets greater depth of information.
Cycles in cycles.
Yep, and so the chaga is then, it's basically, when you bring that in your body, it's entraining you to much greater galactic or universal cycles, instead of just very solar system inner planet cycles.
So not like in sound healing you use resonance or entrainment. This is entrainment to lift you up to a higher frequency.
Right, yeah, to higher frequencies, or even a better description
bandwidth.
would be richer bandwidth. Yeah,
Yes,
it's a richer bandwidth of information and just feelings and emotions and everything that it makes up our reality.
Yes.
So that's why over the years, I love food. I mean, I love avocados, I love lettuce, I love tomatoes, but those are just things that are formed in their little cycle of time,
Yes.
right? Like even an avocado, I think the maximum avocado is going to stay on a tree. Actually, some avocados can make it on a tree longer than a year. So that's unusual, actually, now that I'm thinking about that. But most of them are 9 months or less. You know, most of that food is 9 months or less. But this other stuff, the deeper level of wisdom, that's what I'm more attracted to now.
Yes.
That's what I really recommend more for people now, because it gives you a deeper depth of experience. Another Rudolf Steiner issue is that he really believes the biggest problem facing the human race is superficiality. And see, this inner planet, eating things that are 3 weeks old, 6 weeks old, 9 weeks old, 12 weeks old, after a while, it gives you a very superficial view of the world. It's very just, there's your solar system, that's it. But we realize we're in a much bigger galactic situation. So we need to now take in substances, whether it's the ginseng or the shaga or whatever it is that's been on that tree for years or been in the ground for years, and develop that wisdom that takes us to the galactic level, universal level.
Talking about the galactic level and wisdom and the universal level, I just produced a DVD with Lynn Taggart, as you probably know, you know her work. Her latest book is The Bond. I'm thinking there are a few factors that remind me of her work. She talks about the connection of the things, the interconnectedness, so the bond, but also she calls us human beings part of a super galactic organism. Is that the thing, that is the connection and the intricate relationship between things which we forgot, and also for our food?
Yeah.
Do we have to combine, remember what our connection to nature is, or is it deeper than that? The metaphysical and esoteric of food, so to speak.
I really am into nature-based spirituality, because nature is operating in a bunch of really great frequencies that are like symphonies that mix together. And when we get our time in nature, we entrain to those and we feel those harmonics and we feel better.
Yes.
But obviously our galaxy is a very big place and our universe is a very big place. So that means God must be very, 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 very big. And that's what's happening as a race, is we're coming to a level of understanding that, okay, we're not the only ones in the cosmos, we're not alone, it's not a mistake, we're actually part of a great organism. And basically the way it's been described to me, and I love this metaphor, is that God creates you and creates me and creates everybody and everything, so there can be a stereophonic reality for itself to learn about itself.
To experience itself.
To experience itself. So I can experience you and you experience me, but we're really just both parts of God experiencing
So
each
then
other.
we can comprehend and copy.
Yeah.
Otherwise we can't do that. Well, isn't it true that bacteria and even our DNA isn't in a way human, or let's call it universal or cosmic, that it has an other kind of source that we think it is? I believe you mentioned that
Yes, that's right.
yesterday.
There's two researchers. I put this in my Shaga book. This is also very well detailed in my friend David Wilcock's book, The Source Field Investigations, which is a very good book.
Yes.
They basically studied space dust for 10 years, these two astronomers, and they came to the conclusion, these are high-level British astronomers, they came to the conclusion that it looked to them like it was freeze-dried bacteria. That's a big statement. I mean, what? So this dead world that we believe is out there, or dead space that we believe is out there, may actually not be any of that at all. We may actually live inside a living organism, and this is one cell, our Earth, of this living organism. A conscious organism that has an intent. And so this gets onto this whole thing about, I'm not a believer in this whole survival of the fittest, Darwin, kill yourself, kill everybody kind of story, because that makes great soldiers, but that's not the future of our planet, right? And it's bad philosophy. So I'm a believer in this humanoid template. You know, we're humanoids. This humanoid template is a galactic template. And when we start looking around into the UFO stories and all these stuff that is in the fringe of our awareness, we start seeing that these beings that are around us are humanoid. And that they have DNA like us, not exactly like us, or else they'd be us, but they're a little different. But it's DNA none the same. Francis Crick, if you recall, he was the discoverer of DNA. He also wrote an entire book on the theory that DNA.
Xenobiology?
It's called panspermia, I think.
Oh,
was the name
that's
of it.
yeah.
And his take on it was that there's no way DNA can come from here. It's too complex. So that then we start looking at his DNA as part. It's part of maybe the structure of matter. And in fact, that's what David Wilcock presents in his book. He basically presents the idea and the evidence and the scientific evidence, over 1,000 scientific studies in that book, indicating that if you clear everything away, DNA can spontaneously form.
So we are stardust.
Yep.
And nature is as well.
Yep. And that basically what I like about DNA, which is a really cool discussion, is that let's say you get everything working perfect. You got your food going. You're really, everything. You got your raw living foods. And my message is about raw and living foods. So you get life force coming in. I mean, geez, that's living food. You got superfoods, so you're getting nourished at every level, galactic levels.
Yes.
You get the herbs coming in, so you're getting immunological intelligence and intelligent wisdom at galactic levels. Let's say everything's like buzzing along, everything's just doing amazing. Then you come to this level of like, okay, what is going to be the future of our DNA? Where is this going to? And
Because of the epigenetics and the changing environment.
Right, because now we're giving it perfect environment, right?
Yes.
So we're perfecting it. So we're actually getting the genetics to be all switched on. Everything's good. Like, okay, everything's
Genes
switched on.
on, yes,
Genes
Houston,
on,
no problem.
Click, wherever the button is
Houston, we
switched.
do not have a problem. We can off to go.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
And that's when I believe that we start to go to the next level, which is to understand how big God really is. And that's when we start to realize, okay, we start really not only feeling, but we start actually communicating with other beings that are around us that aren't us, that are intelligent, that are on their ships or in other dimensions or whatever, and we start to open up to like a bigger picture. And there's a lot of beings on this planet who've already gotten there, they're already there. To open up a bigger picture so we can start actually having more fun with reality.
Yes.
Because I believe in a magical reality. Underneath everything, all the science, everything is magical.
Besides the comprehension of how it works.
Yeah, it's magical. It's beyond. There's actually a big part of our reality that no matter how much we've listened to Victor Schauber and try to comprehend our reality, we'll never be able to.
It's still holographic and multidimensional.
It's multidimensional and
persistent
magical.
illusion.
It's a persistent illusion. And so then we can start getting into more of the fun of being a being incarnated in this dimension. Unfortunately now there's a lot of like pain. We have to learn through pain. I learned a lot of my life through pain, and then at some point I realized, well, I better get on to getting the
pleasure
lesson
bus
before, right? Let me get the lesson before the pain hits me. But that's kind of where we are in our cycle, where we're going. But it would be nice to get to that place where it's like, okay, now we're all moving forward together. We're realizing how big the universe is. We're having fun. We're exploring together. We're being scientific, and as much as we can be. But we're not so overly scientific that we don't realize that actually underneath it all is magic.
Sure. So we're still bridging times, though. This is an interesting time to live in.
Right. Yeah, because right now we can grasp, like what I just said, for example. But yet we still have the old structures of governments and banking and whatever that is, who knows what that stuff is, and chemical companies. And so the old world, that structure, is going to get washed away in a tsunami of love, hopefully sooner than later, but eventually, yes. I mean, thousands of years, yes. The old structure
and it comes from bottoms up, right? The change comes from bottoms up.
It's actually from right here, from your heart. The individual, your own personal heart transformation of how you feel about the world, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about others, how you feel about our future. It's a heart feeling and acting from a heart-centered space, and then gradually working it out from there, because then other people realize like, oh, he's actually speaking from his heart, or oh, she's actually speaking from her heart. Then that affects them, where they go, whoa, maybe I need to come from my heart. And that's the groundswell, right?
That's interesting. So it comes from an individual level, but it grows out because of its empathy and its radiance as a global consciousness kind of thing.
Yes.
But it's not a mass thing. It's still an individual thing.
It's an individual thing. It is our choice. Yep. Absolutely. But this is what happens to me every day. Somebody comes to me and they tell me, we've got this problem in our schools and this in our universities, and we've got all this going in airplanes and airports and all these buildings and all these. And it's like, wait, hold on. Let's bring it right back here. Let's just work here. We don't worry about that. That you don't even need to think about that. So our thinking is dragging us into this thing it's not real. Here's what's real. What's going on in your heart right now? That's what I like to get us to. Is we bring it right back there. Whenever I get confused, worried, I'm out over there somewhere, I'm thinking about whatever. What am I doing? I'm bringing it back here. Everything's fine. This is amazing.
So in the now and in the heart.
In the heart, yeah.
Yes.
In particular, yeah. And the now is the heart.
Yes.
Really, it's the essence of it. And this allows us to then really take our whole nutrition to the next level, which is, when you're totally in your heart, you're totally centered with what your mission is and what you're all about. Do you really need food? Then you go to more subtle energies.
Like the breatharians?
Yeah, exactly. Where you go into subtle energies. My friend over here is a breatharian.
Okay.
So he's living on subtle energy, and he's teaching me how to live off subtle energy. And wow, that's a beautiful thing. To just live off those subtle energies and be nourished by, the love you feel in music. That's a great food. He's showing me that. Yes. Wow, that's amazing.
I'm a music producer, so I can.
Oh, yeah.
That
my
resonates.
God. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a drummer, so comes those moments when I'm in it, where I'm in it, and it's like everything disappears. Yeah. That's where I'd like to see us get to there.
That's the orchestra again.
That's the orchestra, right? And I'd like to see us get to those ethericities. That's when we get beyond the food stuff. But we need a bridge, so that the material gross food then bridges over to the living food and the superfoods and the herbalism and the living water. Then that eventually bridges us over to living on the subtle ethericities of our environment. And the great thing there is that, the breatharians are showing us how we are actually very noble organisms. That we are very noble and holy organisms, and that although we went all the way, into the gutter, in the sewer, doesn't matter. We can bring it back, and they're showing us that. And they're here on the planet showing us that.
Down the drain, back to source.
Back to source. Yep, exactly, and bring us back to source, and bring us back to nobility, that understanding that we're noble organisms, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for this beautiful time.
Thank
beautiful
you so
talk.
much. That was great.
And thank you. And for the Dutch listeners. And the camera guy is over there, so I don't have to watch for that camera. Here's the Dutch book. Yes, it's an English title, but it's very convenient because it's the same title. Well, this is the Dutch edition, published by Success Boeken. It's an amazing book to cover all superfoods, all super herbs, and a healthy way of living. And of course, this book was the other Dutch edition we talked about last year, Eating for Beauty, also Success Boeken. I also want to thank Success Gids for doing the event, having the permission to film your great events last year and this year. And of course, go to and yes, you're allowed to drum because we're finished, davidwolfe.com and thebestdayever.com, which I think this one was for me today, and I think for my cameraman. Go to healingsoundmovement.com and worldpeacechild.com for our TV shows. Thank you for your time, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have the best day ever.
Also for your mother. The best mother ever. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That was good.
That was fun. Great. That was great.
Television.